All right. Kudos to the anonymous capybara that is adding to the agenda. I love all of our anonymous animals that are in Google Docs. All right. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes, April.
Awesome. Thanks, Riggs. All right. So thanks, everyone, for joining today. Hopefully, the month is off to a good start for you all. Can't believe it's already April. It's kind of crazy. As I mentioned, agenda is currently clear, so please add some stuff to it. Does anybody have any announcements or anything they want to share before we jump into questions and things like that? Any events or meetups that folks are speaking at? Yeah.
Well, hey, I've got a quick one. This had come out maybe last week, and that's that at the upcoming DockerCon, it had been the case that there was a Moby summit, so something of an open source summit that had been held in the past, and that has gone away and been displaced.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, and now that's been replaced by an open source summit. I think kind of a track that will be held at DockerCon for the first time. And there's a 2-hour service mesh set of topics that we'll be going through, and I'll be I'm mentioning it because I'll be facilitating that 2-hour session, presenting a few things, and wanted to call it out here to the extent that there are people either looking to augment that agenda as it's being formed, or people that might be there to reach out.
So just so I'm clear, is it a 2-hour session, like a birds of a feather, or are you looking for people to do presentations, things like that?
That's a great question. It is. It is almost right in the middle of a birds of a feather, combined with a classic talk. So
Okay.
little, yeah.
All right. Well, I added to the notes. I put a link to it, and then I told folks to contact you if they'd like to get involved. Does that work?
Oh, yeah, that's great.
Awesome. Yeah, that's really cool that they're doing that. I had not heard that until you mentioned it, and that's really great.
Yeah, I think they get tired of me saying service mesh.
But also now I have to go to another conference. Come on, this is a crazy conference time.
April, can you hear me?
Yes.
Well, I'm sure you guys all know. It's just to mention here for somebody living in this world, there will be Google next week.
Oh yes.
Tons of sessions about Istio, and I hope I'll see a lot of friendly faces here at the call. And I don't know if there's going to be anything kind of a hangout together there. The Istio community people, that would be great.
I am not aware of anything. I see Dan Cerulli. Excuse me. I see Dan Cerulli just joined us. I think Dan is speaking at Next, and I'm not sure if there's been any conversation around like a harass Dan at the booth or anything like that. But
was that Archie?
to go to his talk at very least.
If that was Archie, you can never find. Yeah, he never has trouble finding it. That's me. There is not a specific meetup planned right now, Archie. Although, as always, about 3 days before a conference, I say, "Ooh, that'd be a really good idea." Let me put my head together with some smarter heads than mine and see if there's something we can do one of the nights. It's a really good idea, as always. There are, I just put together a slide, something like 10 different sessions for people who are interested. You will start to see some glimpses for those people who are interested in Google's kind of strategy around commercialization. But for just general Istio talk, I think there will be plenty of people around who would be interested in that as well. So let's put our heads together, and we will think what the best way to get the word out if we do that. Certainly, I would tweet about it.
Let's send it to the mailing list.
We can send it to the mailing list. Yeah, that's what we'll do. So we'll let you know. And of course, Archie, you should just bug me, and we can hang out a little bit.
Thanks, Dan. There.
Awesome. So that's a lot of cool stuff that's happening just this month. And then, of course, I know Feels like May is a little quiet for conferences, but then June it starts up again. So definitely a busy conference year this year.
I don't know if you've heard of QCon, but it's in May.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, that's a small little thing. Yeah, that's definitely a big one on the horizon as well. So lots to keep us busy.
The Service Mesh conference last week. Unfortunately, I was like in some.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's any people from there who was attended. Any feedback in general?
Dan, did you go?
I, alas, was on a beach in Hawaii that day.
Oh.
I didn't learn nearly as much as I would have had I been.
Oh, how terrible.
Right.
That's why you look all tanned and rested.
That's exactly why. This week has taken the rest out of me. Was anyone there? I would love to hear perspective.
Yeah.
If there was anything here.
I think Lynn, Rom, Lynn, Rom, and Louie were all there. I know they were there. I don't think any of them are on the call though.
No, I don't see them.
Maybe we can put them on the agenda for next
okay.
week. But yeah, that would be good to have them give a recap.
Oh, that's right. Lee was there. Yeah. Lee was there.
Yeah, I don't know. You want to hear my voice any more than you already have.
No, tell us what you thought.
Yeah, there were more. I think about 250 registrants. I'm guessing about 180 showed. What's the right word? Not pinnacle and not epitome, but just folks that were very clearly interested in that specific subject. People that had both vested interests, those that have projects or commercial offerings around service meshes, and service meshes, most notably being Istio and then Envoy, and its varied use. Those were certainly the two that were of focus at the conference. A couple of things that one of the hosting companies, or the hosting company, had announced, Petri. They had announced, I think, some things that were maybe public before, but maybe not as prominently, marketed. One of those is Get Envoy, which is a curated distribution that they're helping provide. Part of what it does can help facilitate upgrades of Envoy within your environment. There were some things around, pretty interesting things around next generation access control. So for all of us who are familiar with role-based access control, and some of us who are familiar with attribute-based access control, RBAC, ABAC, there's a proposal out there where there's some collaboration being done with NIST for NGAC, Next Generation Access Control. When the videos are posted, maybe that's something to look into. That's kind of interesting. Some other proposals and thoughts around a presentation from Larry Peterson of the ONF with respect to really this concept of like merging service provider grade network use cases of kind of layers 1 through 4 focused things, with much of where I consider that the rest of us, or those that are well represented on this call, kind of focus on layers 5 through 7, which I thought was interesting because certainly there's kind of the service provider grade or service provider world of VNFs and it's just a different virtualization area. So there was a presentation by the Network Service Mesh group, which is a project that's been proposed for review as an incubation project in CNCF. Having spoken with Frederick there, one of the founders of that project, I finally got an answer as to why they named it Network Service Mesh so generically, and that was in part something of a devious move to have it be the canonical reference for a network service mesh. And so anyway, we got a chuckle out of that. But anyway, I think I could drone on about I ended up presenting Meshery, which is an open source project that I mentioned during our last community call. Well done. I thought it was, our first event from that team. As a matter of fact, the event was so successful that it'll be inducted into the CNCF or rather inducted into CNCF/KubeCon. The next time that it's held will be organized by the CNCF or the LF.
Lee, do you mind answering some questions about the event?
Sure.
In your since you seem to be a pretty accurate estimator of numbers, what percentage of the people do you think were there, either behind an open source project or a commercial project that helps implement service mesh, and what percentage were either using or actively considering using service mesh for their business workloads?
Yeah, it was between there again. So in my definitive estimation, it was between. I had landed around 60-ish% that were insiders, that were industry insiders representing various interests, what's good and evil, and then others who were there who are either actively using or actively considering, others representing large other organizations that are not producing, but rather are consuming and running meshes. Yeah.
And
this is Christian. I joined late. Sorry. Was this in reference to Service Mesh Day, or what was this?
Yeah. We were just talking about Service Mesh Day for those of us who
got it.
had to be in Hawaii instead. Were you there, Christian?
I wasn't. No, I had to move. I was moving houses, so couldn't make it.
So what I'm hearing is the simple solution is that the next Service Mesh Day needs to happen in Hawaii.
It is about time someone had a good idea on this call, April. One other question, Lee. Did you hear people talking about non-Kubernetes service mesh, incorporation of non-Kubernetes workloads?
It was, I mentioned this a second ago, but much of what I had heard in that regard was, the answer is yes, and it was with respect to use cases that I consider to sit under the label of edge or service provider. Meaning that how do you onboard things onto the mesh that are out on the edge? There's a lot of hey, there's a cell tower here. We can co-locate some compute next to it, do some intelligent things there. It would be even better if that was on a mesh, and that wasn't necessarily in context of Kubernetes. And the network service mesh itself is certainly of that genre of design and thinking. And so, I got lost in some hallway conversations. So it could have been the case that people were, certainly like just Envoy as a topic was there. And certainly Envoy is not, it'd be interesting to know the percentage of the time that Envoy is run unto its own, outside of Kubernetes.
Yeah, and just to add to that, this is Ram. I didn't hear anything much about like other container orchestration platforms, but I was surprised by the amount of non-container workload that people were interested in adding to the mesh. So, VM workload, traditional applications.
Yeah, I think it's one of the interesting areas that we will see as enterprises look at adopting this. I think we're going to see two strategies, and I know of enterprises right now employing both. Some people who are using this as a reason to move to containers, and then thinking about service meshing things. But yet others who are saying no, we can't move everything right now, but we want service mesh right now.
Yeah, that whole brownfield landscape is more important. We should probably prioritize that as well.
And the case where they've put their greenfield stuff into containers, and they still want to be able to connect and get secure connections between existing brownfield and the new greenfield stuff.
Right, even if that's just a gateway traffic thing, but yeah, they still want that connection, and they want Istio to help with, or any type of service mesh to help with that.
Curious, based on the side conversations and the conversations in general at the day, what features were people gravitating towards the most from a mesh point of view?
I heard security being a really big feature that attracted people to Service Mesh. Just the encryption between pod to pod or service to service.
Yeah, yeah. I didn't hear one bubble out more than the next, and maybe because again I was out in the hall. But for sure, of the conversations I've had over the last 18 months, it's been the ability to take the blinders off and have observability, see what's going on. And it was the observability that was the most significant attractant. I do think that Christian's point is well taken, and Christian, not explicitly trying to do so, but certainly makes a good case for Console Connect as being like an off of Kubernetes onto a secure communications channel. But,
yeah, there was a period of time there where I was running into customers that were already using Console and then were pretty gung-ho about Console Connect, but then I feel like it's died down, at least from what I've experienced.
And that might have been I know that for my part, as we've looked to engage with HashiCorp on having them build out an adapter for Meshery, that open source project, they've been mostly off, and then recently very on in terms of wanting to contribute there. My sense of them being off was to your point about that they weren't hearing that a lot from their, that customers weren't banging on their door.
Yeah.
Connect, but something changed in the last few weeks there.
Awesome. Thanks everybody for the feedback on the event and what you heard and saw. Anybody else have anything they want to share, or?
Is anyone here running 1.1 yet?
I'm probably going to start later this week or early next week.
And do you run, what sort of scale do you run, Osman?
Just a 5-node cluster, nothing too large.
Okay.
We have a large customer in Canada that is waiting for 1.1 because they have a pile of issues that they're supposed to be fixed in 1.1. But I just had a call with them and they said, like, we just put a little bit in the back because they couldn't go in production with the previous release because there was a lot of issues they had.
At scale, certainly, that's not uncommon. I've seen some. I don't know if everyone's seen the new performance page, but the performance page was updated with new numbers, and it's much improved. So I'm interested to see if that's. We're working closely with a couple of companies who are implementing pure open source, and we're hoping we can talk about them publicly in not too long, because it's doing much better at large scale, where large scale is thousands of services, some of which have thousands of pods.
Yeah, I'm actually going to do a demo today on the sidecar resource with over 100 services, probably 20 nodes on Kubernetes, and just show the performance and memory overhead profiles dip and become better optimized with those configurations.
I'm going to see if I can pop down to Phoenix for that meetup. Sounds great.
Come on down.
Is that specifically showing the difference between a 1.0 and a 1.1, or the specific settings?
It's specifically showing what when you have a mesh with, say, 100 services, each service kind of knows about every single other service and every permutation of that service. But with the sidecar resource, you can pare that down and you can focus it per namespace, or you can get very fine-grained.
I added a link to the page, to the notes, so if you want to take a look.
Yeah, that'd be cool. The performance team actually did a lot of work around that, and that alone made a substantial difference in the performance of the overall mesh, especially at scale.
Yeah. I think I saw a tweet somewhere. I'll go back and find it. Maybe I can put it in the chat. That said that it also reduced pilot CPU usage by 90%.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy, right?
Yeah,
makes total sense. But yeah.
I have a customer. Actually, they've publicly talked about their usage. Though they haven't given me permission to share their numbers. And they saw vastly, we'll see always the numbers, vastly reduced CPU. That was their big concern with CPU, and they saw vastly reduced CPU. Let's see if we can find that.
Yeah, pretty much at this point. I mean, based on the numbers that we're seeing here, I mean, you have to recommend all customers move to 1.1. I mean, it's a no-brainer at this point. Plus, some of the other features and improvements really makes 1.1 extremely attractive.
So if you are running a pre 1.1, and this is any sort of concern at all, it's a highly recommended upgrade. People who are doing it are seeing great improvement in what was one of our biggest areas of concern that we gave people. The increased namespace isolation has some good side benefits too. Not only is it better for performance, but it's also better for isolating your teams from each other. A very common pattern that we're seeing in implementations is allocating namespaces per team. And the namespace isolation is also a good way using Kubernetes RBAC to prevent one team from messing up another team, inadvertently or advertently.
And in 1.1, we properly added in the resource requests and limits. So as you do multiple teams in a cluster, in this case, you do the namespace separation, and you can add namespace quotas, resource quotas, and Istio will work just fine. Prior to 1.1, that's not the case. There's actually a bug there that Istio will not work with resource quotas applied.
Awesome. We have some questions in the doc. First one is, curious to know the support for Istio and Windows Kubernetes containers.
Hi, this is Srinivas. I added that query. I know recently the Windows support for Kubernetes has evolved, and I'm curious to know how the Envoy proxy and the Istio, broader Istio, fits into the Windows containers in future.
Anybody?
Is there anyone on the call who can speak to that? Speaking for myself, I don't know where this sits or what the relevant issues would be. It's going to get it. Yeah. Anyone have any expertise here?
Well, we're not running it as a requirement at the moment. I'm not surprised that it's coming up, and I mean, especially now with Kube 1.14, we're hearing more and more requests for Windows support, given that it is now official. So everyone's going, okay, when's everybody going to support Windows now? Ultimately, this is something we have to take through the TOC and work through the requirements. It will be a multi-arg build, so our entire build process will have to change. The testing process will have to change. Obviously, any components that run on those nodes will have to support Windows, which is predominantly Envoy, which shouldn't be a problem, right? Hopefully, Envoy should run on Windows just fine. But that's something that we would have to investigate and look at and take through the TOC.
Yeah, because
according to there's an Envoy PR or an Envoy issue number 129 that is about its Windows implementation, and it's not claimed to. It claims to be kind of working, but not production ready. The quote is far from production ready, and there's a burn down doc linked.
What was the date of the last update on that?
16 days ago.
Oh, okay.
Okay, recent.
Last time I saw
Yeah,
it.
so it's an active topic,
It's great.
but I think that it's unfortunately not ready. It's not just Istio things. It's like Envoy and Windows is not really ready yet either.
Yeah, and that's going to be the biggest concern because that's the piece that runs in the data plane, and of course anything else of Istio that is or will be moving to the data plane will also have the same constraints and requirements to run on Windows.
Mhm.
I see this coming as a big usage in future because I work with enterprise clients who predominantly have a lot of .NET and Windows workloads, and it's going to come on to Kubernetes at some point in time as they started supporting Windows now.
I have a question. Do you expect that they will be running want to run the control plane parts on Windows as well as the data plane parts?
I doubt. Maybe the control plane will still continue to work on the Linux. It's just the online proxy and the data plane which is going to lend itself to the existing control plane.
Thanks.
Yeah, and
at least that scopes it.
Yeah, and that's the path that I would expect that we would take if we would incrementally roll this out. That the control plane we would not try because that's a much larger chunk that we would have to bite off and support. It's easier, not easy, but easier for us to support the data plane.
Yeah, the reason I'm thinking on those lines is the larger Kubernetes itself is the master and the control plane is Linux, and I'm seeing most people just adding Windows nodes to the control plane. So that should be the direction.
Yeah, completely agree.
Awesome. Excuse me. You had another question added to the agenda, Srinivas. Do you want to talk to that one as well?
I kind of removed it because it is
okay.
in line with the kubeflow, so it
Sure.
might not be completely relevant here. I removed it.
Okay. Ming, you want to talk about Istio with Terraform?
Yeah, it's kind of like a shameless plug, but I originally wrote it in response to Srinivas' previous question about KSNet. So I've been working on a brand new Terraform plugin for Kubernetes, which is aside from the official one. My version in particular deals with supporting all the Kubernetes resources as opposed to the very limited set that the official one supports. And the most challenging part is the resources based on CRDs. And so Istio has lots of CRDs, and it's spent the last sort of couple of months using Istio as sort of my proving ground, and I finally got it working last week. So I just thought that I let everyone know. And so using this work, I'm able to first of all take the Istio-demo YAML, and which is like a plain YAML generated from a Helm chart, and I'm able to automatically convert it to Terraform format and then deploy it like a regular Terraform module. It's pretty easy. Right now, it's limited in terms of configurability, so I'll probably going forward start adding more knobs and switches to it. And if anyone wants a demo, let me know, and I can show you how it works offline.
The link is in the notes if anyone wants to check it out.
Hey Ming, I'd like to tweet about it. Do you have a Twitter account you want me to tag?
No, I'm not hip like that. Sorry.
You're post hip. That's cool. I get it.
You're so hip, you are too hip for Twitter. That's what it is.
Yeah, I mean, if I mean, I do sort of most of my communications via code on GitHub. So anything, feel free to log an issue or hit me up directly if you want to have a one-on-one demo on how it works. And just a comment on 111. It works a lot better than when I tried it previously. And I'm not a heavy user, but yeah, I'm looking forward to ultimately integrating Istio with Knative.
Awesome. I see there's some links in the doc for Canadian events that are coming up, which is awesome. And then it looks like Lynn is doing a deep dive webinar, so there's a link there for folks to register for that. And then there's a link to the new Istio performance page as well. So lots of good things to check out in the doc. Julian had a question about load shedding functionality to Mixer workloads. Anybody able to explain that? Who wrote the blog? No one that we can put on the spot here, unfortunately. Anybody familiar with?
The question is in the chat, by the way. It says, can anyone explains in the blog, I did not work on the blog. I don't know if Riggs, you had any part in that, any part in writing it. It says, can someone explain load shedding functionality in Mixer workloads?
I actually didn't. That was mostly written by the folks at IBM. So.
Right.
So Dan Berg, we should put on the spot. No, I'm just
added
kidding.
load shedding functionality. Workloads. Hang on, I'm gonna just ping someone offline and.
Yeah, it's listed as a performance enhancement.
I have a little bit of experience with load shedding. It depends on the details of the question, what I might be able to answer.
It's a bullet point as one of the enhancements in 1.1, but it's not. That's literally, it says added load shedding functionality to Mixer workloads.
I see. So at a very high level, which is the only level I'm capable of operating at, the load shedding for Mixer allows us to watch the latency of incoming Mixer reports as well as policy requests. And if they get over an established threshold, which if I remember by default is 100 milliseconds, Mixer will simply drop those requests. That does mean that for Mixer reports, telemetry, trace data, et cetera, will not be collected. It also means that for policy, you will either fail open or fail close, depending on how you've configured your policy engine. But it has the advantage that you don't have a whole bunch of envoys that are waiting for an excessive amount of time. We saw certain scenarios where Mixer gets overwhelmed, where Envoy would be waiting on an individual request for more than 5 seconds, which has the ability to impact your production traffic. So it's a way of isolating your production traffic from being affected by a Mixer failure. It is on by default in 1.1. And like I said, I believe the threshold is 100 milliseconds. You can change that within the Mixer command line to being off by default, or to only list in the log when it would have load shed, if you'd like to turn it on provisionally, kind of to test out what it would look like without actually affecting your workloads.
Mitch, if that's what you consider a high-level explanation with no understanding, I can't wait to hear you go into detail on something.
I was going to say, that's a pretty great explanation.
Maybe he should dig in a little bit more.
I do have a follow-up question. You know if it is individually for Mixer policy and Mixer telemetry?
I don't think so. You know, let me follow up on that in about 2 minutes.
Okay.
Cool. All right. looks like that was all of the questions we had in the doc and everything in the chat. So does anybody want to add anything else while
Just
Mitch
one
looks up details?
Just one quick thing, April. I'm creating an issue to add an explanation about load shedding to the glossary, so we have clarity there.
You're the best, Riggs. Yeah, and I would also, just as another shameless plug, like when you come across maybe things in blog posts, documentations, whatever, that don't make sense, file an issue. And then Riggs can help kind of dig through those and triage them. And it helps us identify like where the docs are missing, detail. So don't be shy to say, I don't get it.
Yeah, if you don't get it, file an issue, assign it to me, and I'll try to find the answer for you.
Okay, and so I do have a provisional answer for load shedding on telemetry versus policy. Because we do run two different instances of Mixer, one for telemetry and one for policy. You can change the load shedding mode on one and not the other. Off the top of my head, I don't know if we have like Helm support for that, if you could deploy it by default just using a Helm value, or if you need to manually edit the deployments to achieve that effect.
Looking at the Mixer installation options, I do see both of them. They are called out separately, which isn't surprising. I just wanted to make sure. So you do have the ability to say, okay, I don't care if you throw away some telemetry, but I do care about policy. So that's good. Read the docs. Always read the docs.
Anyone have anything else that you want to chat about, talk about? Ask Dan about his trip to Hawaii.
I will put in one more plug for the updated docs site. I'll thank Riggs for a lot of work on the docs site. There is a I think it's in the about section in community. There's a page for people who are using Istio. And PRs are welcome there. So if you're using Istio, Archie, if you have customers who are using Istio, encourage people. They're welcome to throw their logo up there. We've got 15 companies up there right now. I know it's not everybody who's using it because I know several companies who aren't up here. So would love to see that list get longer and longer. Okay, great.
Anything else?
Few links in the doc. In Canada, we're organizing several events.
Yep.
Some Istio talks there. And if anybody wants to come to Canada during F1 week in June, end of September, we're going to have GDG DevFest. So like if you guys are interested, I'll be happy to help with the safety and maybe even pay the trip. So depends on the event.
Are you actively soliciting content or just attendees?
No, just good speakers and just.
Okay. Well, we should talk.
Okay.
If you like fast cars, come talk about Istio.
Maybe I'd rather go to Montreal.
Yes.
All right. Anything else? Who's coming to next? Is anybody else joining? No, Dan. We know Archie.
I'll be there.
Osman will be there. Yeah. All right. So we have next, and then we have DockerCon. It looks like is the one after that. If you're interested in the service mesh aspect there, reach out to Lee. And then KubeCon. So is anybody planning to go to KubeCon? Barcelona? I know so. Dan. Oh, you're maybe. Okay.
Maybe.
I can go because of the next.
Yeah, we'll be there, April. We have a pretty major presence at KubeCon.
Yep. And
Cool.
Dan Berg and I will be there as well from IBM.
Awesome. Well, maybe folks can meet up or so. I mean, there's so much that goes on around the KubeCons. I know there's so many, you're pulled in so many places, but if nothing else, it's always good to know who's going to be there and who to track down in the hallway.
April, it really doesn't matter, but just for completeness, I'll be presenting on Istio and some other service meshes at Container World in the just before KubeCon, so just here in a couple weeks.
Okay, cool. If folks have events, make sure Zach from Aspen Mesh is aware, because he's updating the community calendar. So if you've got stuff, just shoot him a link, and then he can, kind of curate and make sure we've got all the good stuff on the community calendar.
And I just popped my email in the chat to make it easy for anyone that might have something.
Thanks, Zach.
Mm-hmm.
That's great, Zach. Thank you very much for doing that.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
All right, and then I guess after KubeCon, the next big one that I know of is OzCon, and we'll definitely be there. I don't know of a service mesh day this year like there was last year, but of course, as we all know with conferences, things come together at the last minute, so that could always change. But if nothing else, I know a lot of us will be there, so that's another good opportunity to kind of meet up and chat. We certainly had fun last year, so hopefully we can all get together again this year. All right, unless anybody's got anything else, I think we can wrap it up and everybody can get 15 minutes back.
Thanks for attending, everybody. Really appreciate your time.
Yeah.
You have been removed from the call. Goodbye.
All right.
Thanks all.
Everyone.
Bye.
Thanks.